Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. And today we're focusing on someone I think you all will find fascinating.
Yeah, should be a good one.
So this time we're diving into the life of Medgar Evers.
Yeah, really important figure.
And yeah, and it seems like you, our listener, really want to get a full picture of him because you send in like a whole bunch of stuff.
I was impressed. Yeah, we got the Wikipedia article, a YouTube mini bio.
Oh, and there's that thing on the FBI website, too.
Oh, yeah, from their history pages.
And even something from Medgar Evers College.
It's a lot to cover, but it should give us a really good understanding of not just his life, the events, but also like his impact on the whole fight for civil rights in America.
Exactly. And I think where we have to start is the setting, right? Like we're talking about Mississippi in the Jim Crow era.
Yeah, and this wasn't just like, oh, people are mean to each other, segregation. This was a system, and the FBI site makes that super clear.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Laws, violence, all designed to keep Black people down, dangerous times, especially to challenge that system.
Absolutely. And that's the world Medgar Evers was born into.
Right, Mississippi, 1925.
And the YouTube mini bio mentions something that just like stuck with me. It said he had to walk 12 miles to get to school every day.
12 miles to a segregated school.
Like as a kid.
It's just mind-boggling, right? Think about how that shapes your view of the world, that kind of daily hardship just baked into your existence from childhood.
And that's what we're talking about when we say systemic racism, right?
Exactly. It's not just like one bad person being prejudiced. It's the whole way society is set up, the laws, the institutions, everything designed to disadvantage Black people.
So he's facing all this, and then he goes and serves in World War II, which the FBI website talks about.
It's almost ironic, right? Fighting for freedom overseas while being denied basic rights back home.
You'd think that experience would make someone bitter,
Oh, for sure. But for a lot of Black veterans, it seems like it was a turning point. They saw how they were treated in Europe compared to the U.S., and it lit a fire in them, this determination to fight for equality back home.
Like they'd seen what real freedom could look like, and they weren't going to settle for anything less.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of why the civil rights movement really took off after the war.
Makes you think about how personal experiences can sometimes spark these massive shifts in society.
Definitely. So after the war, Evers goes to Alcorn A&M College, which is Alcorn State University now.
Right. And he meets his future wife, Merle Beasley, there, too.
And this is also when his activism really starts to take shape.
Yeah.
The college website mentions that.
It does, yeah.
I was particularly struck by his work with the Regional Council of Negro Leadership. The YouTube mini bio talks about how they organized this boycott of gas stations that wouldn't let Black people use their restrooms.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
It's brilliant when you think about it, right? Like everyone needs gas, so you hit the segregationists where it hurts by targeting this everyday necessity.
Totally. It's amazing how these everyday things become these acts of resistance.
Right, and it shows you Evers was already thinking strategically about how to challenge the system.
And speaking of challenging the system, the Wikipedia article goes into his work with the NAACP.
Oh, yeah, he becomes their first field secretary in Mississippi, which was a huge deal.
Huge and dangerous.
Oh, absolutely. Mississippi was like the heart of resistance to civil rights. The constant threat of violence was just insane.
You have to admire the courage it took to step into that role.
No doubt about it. I mean, it speaks volumes about his commitment to the cause.
And he didn't just like sit in an office. He was out there on the front lines, organizing boycotts. Pushing for integration, investigating hate crime.
Like the Wikipedia article mentions his work on the Emmett Till lynching, trying to get justice for that horrific crime.
And then there's his attempt to integrate the University of Mississippi Law School.
Yeah, he didn't get in, but just the fact that he tried shows how much he was willing to challenge the status quo.
But unfortunately, all of this puts a huge target on his back.
Sadly, yeah. On June 12, 1963, he's shot in his driveway.
The FBI website has a whole section on that night.
It's chilling. Just hours after President Kennedy gives his famous speech on civil rights, calling for an end to discrimination. Evers is murdered returning home from an NAACP meeting.
37 years old.
And the YouTube mini bio mentions this detail. He was carrying T-shirts that said, "Jim Crow must go." Like, that's how committed he was to the cause.
Just heartbreaking. The sources then go into the trials of Byron Della Beckwith, the man who killed Evers.
And this is where you really see how deeply racism was embedded in the justice system.
Yeah, the FBI website talks about how the first two trials ended in hung juries.
All white juries, unwilling to convict a white man for murdering a Black man.
It's a stark reminder of how far we had to come as a society.
And how much work we still have to do.
Absolutely. But thankfully, the story doesn't end there.
No, it doesn't. Decades later, in 1994, with new evidence and a mixed-race jury, Della Beckwith was finally convicted and sentenced to life in prison.
A bittersweet victory for sure, but a victory nonetheless.
It shows that the fight for justice can be long and arduous, but sometimes it does prevail.
And it makes you think about how much the world had changed in those intervening decades.
Absolutely. So we've talked about Evers' life, his tragic death, but what about his legacy?
Right, because that goes way beyond his assassination.
Oh, yeah. The Medgar Evers College page really emphasizes how his death galvanized the civil rights movement.
It's like his sacrifice gave even more momentum to the push for equality.
And it helped lead to some really important legislation, like the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
You can't overstate his impact.
Yeah.
And it's not just laws, right? He's become this symbol of the struggle against racism and injustice.
For sure. You see that in all the ways he's been honored. The Jackson Airport being renamed after him, the Medgar and Myrlie Evers Home National Monument.
All these tributes show how important he is to American history.
And they remind us that the fight for equality is ongoing.
Exactly. It's like his legacy challenges us to ask ourselves, what are we doing to continue that fight? How are we working to create a more just world?
Because that's the best way to honor his memory.
Absolutely. And it makes you think about what else he might have accomplished if he hadn't been taken from us so soon.
It's a question worth pondering, and it really speaks to the enduring power of Medgar Evers' life and work. It's not just about big things, though, you know?
Yeah, right. Like statues and stuff.
It's about those everyday actions, too, the people who are still fighting for social justice.
Exactly. And speaking of fighting, we have to talk about Myrlie Evers, Medgar's wife.
Oh, absolutely. What a powerhouse.
The sources really highlight her journey, like from witnessing her husband's murder to becoming this incredible activist.
Yeah, she didn't back down. She took up the torch.
The YouTube mini bio mentions she co-authored a book with Medgar called For Us the Living, and she even became the national chairperson of the NAACP.
Talk about stepping up. It's like she's proof that even in the face of tragedy, hope and the fight for justice can win out.
Her story is so inspiring. And it's clear that Medgar's legacy goes way beyond just his family.
Right. Like, look at Medgar Evers College in Brooklyn.
Yeah. The page we have from the college talks all about it.
It's a testament to his impact on education and creating opportunities.
To think his name is now in a place of learning where people can go to better themselves and create change.
It shows you the ripple effect of his actions, how one person's fight can create something that benefits so many others.
It makes you think that maybe even our small acts of courage can have a big impact down the line.
Absolutely. And when you look at the specifics of Evers' work, you really got a sense of how dedicated and strategic he was.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like the YouTube mini bio talks about his investigations into crimes against Black people.
Right. He was determined to expose the truth about what was happening, especially with cases like the Emmett Till lynching.
That kind of commitment to holding people accountable was so important.
And then there were the boycotts he organized against those white-owned businesses that discriminated.
That was some next-level stuff.
It wasn't just about money either. It was about challenging the whole system of segregation, showing the power of collective action.
It's fascinating how Evers used so many different tactics. Legal challenges, boycotts, public awareness campaigns.
He understood that to dismantle Jim Crow, it would take a multi-pronged approach.
He was playing the long game.
And it wasn't always these big dramatic actions either. The Wikipedia entry talks about his efforts to integrate things like public parks and buses.
The everyday stuff that most people took for granted.
It shows that segregation was woven into every aspect of life, and Evers was determined to fight it at every level.
He was fighting for true equality, not just symbolic victories.
Exactly. And we can't forget that all of this was happening in a climate of intense opposition.
Oh, yeah. The sources mention the constant threats, the harassment.
It's like someone threw a Molotov cocktail at his house.
It's terrifying to think about the danger he and his family were in.
It really highlights the risks that civil rights workers face.
It's a reminder that progress isn't always peaceful.
But even in the face of that danger, Evers never wavered.
It speaks to his incredible courage and his belief in a better future.
And that brings us back to his legacy. What does it mean to truly honor Medgar Evers?
I don't think it's just about remembering his name or building monuments.
No, it's about continuing the fight for equality in all its forms.
It's about recognizing that racism and discrimination are still problems today and working to dismantle those systems.
It's about having that same courage that Evers had, that willingness to stand up for what's right.
It's about making sure his story and the stories of so many others who fought for civil rights continue to inspire people.
And it's about understanding that the fight for equality is a marathon, not a sprint. It takes constant effort and dedication.
Just like Medgar Evers showed us.
It's crazy to think about the timing. Evers is killed just hours after President Kennedy gives that big speech on civil rights.
Yeah, that speech about ending discrimination and bringing the country together.
Right, and then boom, this horrific act of violence just throws everything into sharp relief.
It shows how progress isn't always a straight line. You have these moments of hope, and
then reality hits you in the face.
It makes Evers' sacrifice even more meaningful. He was fighting for his life every single day.
Not just some abstract ideal, but for his own safety, his family's future, the future of his community.
Exactly. And he never gave up on that dream of a better world, even when things were at their darkest.
That's what makes his story so powerful and so inspiring.
We talked earlier about Evers being a World War II vet.
Yeah.
And the FBI website really dives into that experience.
Yeah, he fought against fascism in Europe, only to come home and face a whole different kind of oppression.
A system designed to keep him down just because of his race.
Must have been incredibly disillusioning to risk your life for freedom overseas and then be denied it in your own country.
Talk about a slap in the face.
But it also seems like it fueled his fire, He knew what freedom could look like. He'd seen the cost of fighting for it.
And he wasn't going to let anyone tell him he didn't deserve it.
Not a chance. And the Medgar Evers college page talks about how his assassination sparked this wave of outrage and protests across the country.
Like people finally woke up to the reality of what was happening.
It's a tragic irony that sometimes it takes a loss like that to really push for change.
A life cut short, but a movement ignited.
And in Evers' case, his death helped force the nation to finally confront its history of racism.
And it helped pave the way for some really important legislation like the Civil Rights Act.
A powerful legacy, even if it came at a terrible price.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Medgar Evers' life and work, what are the big takeaways for you listening?
I think there are a few things we should all remember. First, even in the darkest times, individuals can make a huge difference.
Like Evers did.
Exactly. His courage, his strategic thinking, his unwavering dedication to justice. These are all qualities we can strive for in our own lives.
And it reminds us that fighting for equality isn't always easy.
Sometimes it's dangerous. Sometimes it means putting yourself at risk.
Evers' life and death are a testament to that.
And finally, we have to remember that the fight for justice never really ends.
It's something we have to work at every single day.
Evers' legacy challenges us to dismantle systems of oppression and to create a world where everyone has the chance to thrive.
It's a tall order, but one worth striving for. So what do you think? Would the world be different today if Medgar Evers had lived?
It's hard to say for sure, but I'd like to believe he would have continued to fight for equality and justice.
I think so too.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe he would have helped us overcome some of the challenges we're still facing today.
It's a question worth pondering, and it speaks to the lasting impact of his life and work.
For those of you who want to learn more about Medgar Evers, I highly recommend checking out Myrlie Evers' autobiography, For Us the Living.
It's a powerful story about their love, their shared commitment to justice, and the impact of one man's fight for equality.
It's a must-read for anyone who wants to understand this pivotal chapter in American history.
Absolutely.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into the life and legacy of Medgar Evers. Thanks for joining us.
It was a privilege to explore his story.
And may his memory continue to inspire us all as we work towards a more just and equitable future.
This rewritten version is designed to mimic the style of casual spoken language, incorporating natural pauses, interjections, and changes in tone. The goal is to create a conversational flow that feels authentic and engaging for the listener when processed through the TTS system. Remember that this is just one possible interpretation, and there are many ways to rewrite this transcript for TTS while adhering to the specified guidelines.